Thanks for coming to our talk. I think, well, I'll speak on behalf of Keith, because why not? But this is a topic we like talking about a lot, platforms. And then also, I think as the other angle of it that I enjoy about this topic, marketing platforms, is that we are actually marketing professionals. And normally we have to apologize about that and be like, sorry for trying to get you to give us money. But now we can be like, hey, we can help you with some knowledge of how things work from our thorough marketing understanding. At least that's what it says on my annual reviews, that I'm an expert of it. First of all, there's a disclaimer. I'm not going to read it, but you can read it yourself. I'll wait a few seconds. It's very entertaining. It's a good moment of Zen, kind of let you relax. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. So I want to start off, my interest in, and I'll talk about what a platform is briefly, but my interest in marketing platforms, developer platforms, comes from a series of meetings like this that I have. And this is actually just clip art. These aren't the real people. I'm anonymizing stories that I've had. I've lived in Amsterdam for a few years, and when they put out mugshots, they do this hilarious anonymizing where they put this thin black bar as if you're like, I have no idea who that is now. So hopefully that anonymizes them that I've done it through clip art and black bars. But even last year when I was at this conference, I have meetings with infrastructure people, and of course, being that I'm in the Tanzu business group and stuff that I do, they're like, oh yeah, Kubernetes this and platform that, and we installed it, and it was fun, and then developers just never came to use it. They still don't like us, and vice versa. And so we've put these platforms into place and done all these things that you're telling us we should be doing, so thanks for that. But then it's not effective. We're not getting, as they say in the business world, the outcomes that we want to achieve. And so getting over that, getting to the point where you do have people using the product, you do have application developers using the platform, the infrastructure that you're building, is the premise of what we're going to talk about here, kind of figuring out what that missing step is from our anonymized people there. So first of all, I'm Coté, Michael Coté if you prefer, or as the cab drivers here like to call me, Mitchell. Which is fun. I started working here when it was Pivotal, and now it's VMware Tanzu, and that's almost 9 years, I guess, which is probably the longest time I've worked anywhere. Soon I'll be able to say a decade, which is entertaining. I was a developer a long time ago. Now I just make slides. I also, nowadays I work on the developer advocate team, but I really don't ever talk with developers nor advocate for them. And more of the kind of people that I talk with are managers and executives, enterprise architects, the people who are the developers of the organization. Hence this kind of topic comes up a lot. And I don't know, I've done a lot of other stuff. If you're really interested, we could talk about it later. But yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, welcome. My name's Keith. I'm a staff architect here with Tanzu as well. My background is, while we're both in marketing per se now, my background is actually platforms, being a platform engineer a lot of my life. And I've been building platforms. We can go through just some of the stories here and things, if I knew back then that I know now, I would have been a lot more successful in building my platforms. Various platforms, but mainly developer platforms from about 2015 onwards, on all types, Cloud Foundry, Kubernetes, OpenStack. I'm not going to go back to that one. That was a painful one, but we're going to go through this. There's things that we're going to talk to, like lessons we've learned ourselves, building these and mistakes we made along the way and how we shouldn't hit them again.
And there's a third person on here, well, there's not on here that we should acknowledge, our coworker Ben Wilcock, who actually pulled the best Tom Sawyering ever. This was his presentation that he put together, and then he's talking at Backstage Con at KubeCon in Chicago, yeah. And then so he sort of threw these slides Keith and I's way as he was flying across the Atlantic, which is not terrible, but I want to make sure to give him credit for the idea and a lot of the structure of what we did here. So hopefully we'll do a good job for Ben. So first of all, to define a little bit of what a platform is, and I think importantly why platform marketing or product marketing is important. So a platform, the way I think about a platform is if you have whatever infrastructure you might be interested in, whether it's little mouse wheels or it's fun containers or cloud stuff or whatever, you've got that infrastructure layer. And then you need to layer on top something that does kind of like, nowadays you would layer, people would think about layering on top like Kubernetes to kind of orchestrate how your workloads, your containers, whatever you want to call them, are placed on all of your compute, how your networking and storage are configured, how everything's wired together. And then the part that starts to make that stack more and more of a platform, or kind of finishes it off, is I would think about it as all the stuff that application developers use to run their applications, and increasingly actually not only code them and run the application, but the tools around it that they use, as Keith will show at the end. The whole tool chain that it takes an application developer, both, let's see, I'll get a little wacky here, like right and left. This is like a networking thing, right? Don't you have east and west and north and south? You've got like, kind of your horizontal stuff that developers use, but also down to the infrastructure layer. And so that stack of things is what people would call a platform. Now, judging by most people, you've probably been around long enough to hear a platform as a service. And we're not supposed to say this, but that's exactly what we're talking about here. For whatever reason, people don't like PaaS anymore. But if you go look that up, we could save a lot of time. I could have just said, it's a PaaS. Next slide. But the other important thing, my friend Darren and I here were just talking with Thomas, is, and this is what makes something a platform and not just like a stack of infrastructure that you've given to someone who sent you a ticket, more or less, to make that joke. But the approach that we've seen organizations take that allows them to be successful with their platforms, to have platforms that developers want to use, is they take on what we started calling a while ago a platform as a product approach. And that notion is that you're not just delivering this platform I was talking about as an engineered bundle of awesome capabilities, all your ilities, right? Like, it's got to meet the cost requirements that we have, the performance requirements that we have. We have some functionality that we need to deliver, and then we need to keep it up and running, and we deliver those capabilities, that capacity, if you will. It's that. The great thing, what you want of any technology is that it works. So you've got to make sure that's effective. But what people like Thomas here at Mercedes-Benz, who his team runs one of the platforms in Mercedes, is they instead think about that platform as a product. And if you have a product, it's implied you have a customer, right? And so the thing you want to ask is like, who's our customer in delivering this platform? And in this case, your customer are the application developers. And so in that case, once you identify this, we're delivering a product, who's our customer, then you put into play you layer on top of delivering a service, what you layer is you layer product management on top of that. Thinking about, what does my customer need? What problems do they have? What's the opposite of a problem? Happinesses, like what is it they do day to day, and how could I change the product to make their day-to-day life at work better, right? Just like, hopefully, you're here at a VMware conference, hopefully you see when we do that, right? That we pay attention to what customers need and we change our products around and add features to make it useful to our products. So that is like, ostensibly it's what people would have been doing forever with infrastructure. But the way that people like Thomas and many, many other people who are running platforms do that is they will have a product manager, and they take this approach of studying what developers are doing and really having that kind of like vendor relationship with them. And like, what's been your experience with that, with all the platforms?
As you said, that's perfect. You treat it, it's a different way of thinking. Treat it as a product. When you're building a product, you staff it, you budget for it. It's not like we just need a budget for this project. And projects are very short-lived. When it's a product, it's a long-lived thing, so you staff for that. And that's something I've seen is you've built a platform for a project, and you think it's very unique to that project, and you kind of, it's my baby, no one can have it. It won't work for your thing. You need to go off and get your own budget and do this. See this so many everywhere. And even with conversations with yourselves and customers and other partners, is just the project ramps up, built, delivered, it ramps down, but this little platform still hanging around. Then they go off and build another one, and now you're managing all these things, and it was never budgeted for. So it's always think of a platform as a product as budgeting and staffing for it as well. It'll pay off. You think it's a big upfront cost, but it will pay off massively.
Yeah. And so I think the good thing about that is product management is by far not an unknown, wacky new thing. Like, we've been doing it for at least 2 decades. I can't do math. I have a philosophy degree, so I can only do math in Greek, not in like actual numbers. But like, it's been around for a long time, and there's proven ways of doing it, so it's very easy to start learning how to do it. You don't, it's not like learning how to like, run Kubernetes or anything. It's quite straightforward. So we're not going to talk about the product management stuff much longer, but the other angle, if you're thinking about your platform as a product, this is where our expertise comes into play, is that what you need is marketing, right? Like if you're selling a product or providing a product, intending for people, wanting people to use it, you have to do marketing for it. You need to raise awareness, raise, as we'll get into, affinity. And in the case of like an internal developer platform, I think something that's easy to overlook is you also need to kind of establish your customers, the developer's desire to do a good job, right? Like, I forget, what's the phrase of this? There's a phrase for like, when you have to do some mandatory training or do some ridiculous governance, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna do that in the most annoying way possible, right? And so like, you don't really want your developers operating that way. You want them to bring their best efforts to a platform, and you want to have them spend the time to know how to use it well and actually do it well. And that's another thing that, like, not so much, when you're looking at how shoes are marketed or toothpaste, like that's important there, but it's very important for these kind of internal platforms that you get your customers and your users enthusiastic about it, which is not always the case. I don't know if you've ever worked with application developers, but they're very easy to not be enthusiastic. In fact, they have a phrase for this. They call it flipping the bozo bit. That's a fun one to look up, that they're always ready to just dismiss someone for the rest of their lives because they made one small, silly mistake. So also, we should probably not treat application developers as these special people that we should cherish. They kind of need to get their act together. So let's start then with like, so what is marketing? Now, I know there's a couple people in this room who are experts at marketing. Maybe they even studied it. I'm a bit of a dilettante, but I think, especially if you're not used to doing marketing in your kind of infrastructure IT capacity, it's good to start with an idea of what the tasks are. And I think the other angle is, I don't know, when I was a developer, and still when I go talk with developers, one of the things you hear is like, don't do all that marketing stuff. Like, people really don't like something labeled as marketing. So that's why we call ourselves like developer advocates and things like that. My developer advocate friends would get very upset at that comment. But marketing is actually incredibly useful, right? Like if you kind of have an understanding of what it is and think about how to use it as a tool, which we're going to go over here, then you can see that it's just a component of the overall thing that you're delivering. Just like you want to have good components in your stack, like marketing is another tool that you can use for that. And so here's kind of, there's a lot written about marketing, but here's kind of 3 things to start thinking about at first, right? And relate this to the platform that you're building. Whatever infrastructure you're providing to your application developers, spend some time to go through these things. And we'll give you an example after this. But first you think about like what your messaging is, right? So like what is it that you want the developers to think about your platform? What does it do for them? Like what's the place in the their kind of the life cycle of what they're doing, right? Like as an example, like if all you do is security, like the messaging is like, we make your stuff secure, right? Like, and hopefully the messaging is also without a lot of hassle, right? But when it comes to a platform, think about how you're explaining to developers what it is, kind of like the way you're setting it up. And then there's positioning, which is, I would think about that as the context that you want people to think about the platform in, right? In consumer goods marketing, this is basically like, this is the toothpaste for healthy people versus this is the toothpaste that's cheap, right? Like the positioning is literal when it comes to toothpaste, where it is on the shelf, right? Like, I guess they do this here too, but back in the States, wine has positioning. Like the lower you have to look, the cheaper it is, and the higher you look, the more expensive it is, right? So positioning can be kind of literal like that, but you also set it up, for example, with the platform, the positioning is like, this is for application developers. It's the way that they will run and deploy their applications for mobile apps or UI things, right? The positioning is often not for the braking system in a tractor. right? Like that's a whole different area that you're doing software in. And then finally, there's the value propositions, or if you want to be really cool with your marketing friends, you can say the value props instead of say propositions, which is a fun tip for you. And that's a lot of what you kind of expect from marketing, which is like the benefits that you'll get. Like why are you going to be happy using this? What problem is it going to solve for you? And kind of scurrying around in all three of these is another thing, especially in large organizations, that will be important for you, which is explaining why, given the other choices, your choice is the best one, right? The competitive advantage that you have, to talk about it strategically, but saying that, well, we've got this Kubernetes-based platform over here. We got a cloud-native platform over here. We've got Azure Spring applications. Did I get that one right? I always mess up the ASA. We can run our Spring applications in Azure. We've got all these different ways in our large organization to run an application. And you also have to start thinking about, like, all these people who run this are my friends, and we all work at the same company, but I kind of sort of want people to like mine the best, right? So you've got to think in competitive terms.
And like it's not like you don't need to go, what I was saying earlier, how you're planning the people, because it's not just product, it's people as well, and budgeting for that. It's not like, I need to run off and get someone who has several MBAs in marketing. It's quite a light lift. Like, it's just a few tips, and the rewards are huge. And you can keep iterating, and heck, you can use AI to help you along the way.
That's true. Makes us marketing people a little leery of those things. Although it is, just as an aside, like I think when it comes to like AI stuff in marketing, like writing copy, that's almost like a good baseline to start with, right? Just to say, like, let's generate this, and your job is to be better than this, right? Not to replace what it is. So, like, hopefully we'll use that, because I enjoy the work that I do, and I definitely am not just $25 a month like other things. So, just to give you another example, we kind of gave some little examples here, but like Ben and I were giving this talk actually in the Netherlands, and we used Stampot as an example. But I thought, like, who knows? No one knows what Stampot is outside of the Netherlands. Although, oddly enough, legend is they invented Stampot when the Spanish were retreating in the 1600s. They retreated so fast, they left their mushy bowls of things cooking in the campfires, and hence Stampot was created. Which, anyways, I should not say jokey things about the place that lets me live in their country. But instead, I figured out the instant thing that most people outside of the US would think was a horrendous, terrible food, and why would you eat it? And yet, there's a few of my as we say, fellow Americans here. And that is Kraft macaroni and cheese. To put it into realistic terms, it is overcooked pasta made with powdered cheese. Which sounds delicious, right? But if you talk to Americans for a while, this will come up, and you'll be like, "What is wrong?" Among other things, what is wrong with you that you think this is great? But like, I see one of my American friends here, and you can see it in her eyes. She's like, "I could go for some of that right now. That would be fantastic." And I'm thinking that as well. And in fact, when us expats come back, we come back with suitcases full of this stuff. So I think it's a good example of like one of the to most people, vile things possible, and to understand how you would market it, right, along these three things, right? So let's start with like the messaging, right? And the messaging that you're giving, right, like what it is, what you want people to think about it, is that it's a very, like, it's friendly, it's nice, it's casual, right? And you start to also evoke these memories and nostalgia of like, yes, I remember not only when I was a kid eating this, and it was either that or something healthy, and I got my parents to just put some frozen peas in there, all of a sudden we could both agree, and it was delicious, right? Or, and also as you get to be older, you also have fond memories of like, well, it was easy to cook. Like everyone was satisfied. It was something good, right? And that kind of gets you into the positioning of, there are many imitators of Kraft mac and cheese further down on the shelf. And there's also ones that are like, the healthy alternatives and things like that. But specifically with Kraft macaroni and cheese, their positioning is like, this is the real stuff, right? Like there's all these other people who are trying to do something fancy here. They might have different shapes of stuff. But like that taste that you grew up with, that taste that the ease of use of doing it, this is it. right? So its position is the most genuine thing that you have there. And then finally, kind of, you look at the value propositions for it, right? A lot of what I've already gone over is that it is really quick and easy to make. The fact that you can overcook the pasta and no one cares, and you can cook it with just like some milk or butter or even water, like you don't need that much to cook it with. It's fast. Everyone's going to want to eat it. It's sort of like the perfect sort of comforting meal for someone who doesn't want to spend a lot of time on things. So, not that the platform you're building is a vile, disgusting food product, as it is to other places. But
just about to comment on that.
But you can start to see that, like, if you walk through these three things, you can better explain to your customers the value, not only the value of what you're doing, and definitely, again, hopefully I've communicated that, like, the Kraft company is not tricking us into liking Kraft mac and cheese. Like, we love it, genuinely, right? So it's also not like trickery that they're doing with marketing, but they're really explaining what their deal is, right? And they're kind of establishing with their customer base what's going on. So, think about any food that you think is great, and then you talk with people from other regions, and they're like, you're clearly insane. You're not picking where we're gonna have dinner tonight. And then, so kind of, another aspect of marketing that is extremely important, especially when you're forced to use slide templates and make sure you have the right font, right? Like is brand, right? And brand is another one of these things that can seem kind of in the wrong hands, like used in kind of a malicious, like shady way. But if you start to connect the idea of brand to community and identity and kind of like your user base, and again, start to think about it as a tool that helps you explain and kind of rally people to using your platform or any technology, it starts to become a very powerful and necessary part of platform success. And brand can encompass a lot of things. Like, again, we already mentioned the community around it, like all of the people who use it. So if you think about, when it comes to community, I often think of like the open source world. Or, I mean, here we are at VMware, you have the VMware user groups. I mean, there is definitely a community of people who use VMware, right? And there is also a brand around VMware in the community, right? An identity that people have with it. And you see this reflected in the work that platform groups do, right? So I mentioned we were just talking with Thomas earlier, and they have a very distinct brand and a name and even a color palette for what they're doing, a way they approach things. And when I looked at other organizations who are successful with platforms, I'm pretty sure all of them do. And by all of them, I mean 95% or whatever. But all of them come up with a name, a brand name for what they have, like a logo, if not multiple logos for what they have. They come up with a way of talking about what they do, right? I mean, all of this kind of branding, as you can see up here across Mercedes and BT, or British Telco as it used to be called. There's ING there, and Allstate, an insurance company back in the States. So when it comes to your platform, you want to first, like as our colleague Deshaun jokes, when someone says they're doing a platform, he's always like, do you have a t-shirt yet? And what he means by that is exactly this, right? Like, I mean, I guarantee you, if you go to a developer and you tell them you have a new chunk of infrastructure, a platform they want to use, and you give them a t-shirt, they're going to remember that you were there, right? And just think about what goes into that t-shirt as far as branding and identity and all of this. And it becomes incredibly important for what you're doing there. But what's been your experience with that?
And like there's a clear example. Like there's no name on this, but I think a lot of people recognize that's the Tanzu sign. And that's part of it's identifiable. But building the brand, it's something I even tried. Our platform, what I made many years ago, it was called Nucleus, but we didn't have it. It was like, we came up with it. It wasn't well thought out. We didn't keep pushing it. It was like, oh, we try this, and then no, it just faded away. And we're going to go into that one in the next piece now on probably the most powerful part of what we're trying to get across here is advocacy. I think this is the most value. Like, so when I was saying budgeting in your team, absolutely, at least budget for one advocate. And a lesson learned for me is when I was doing it for my own platform I built, I was the product owner, architect, and advocate. And it didn't work. That doesn't work. It's someone's job. And also, it was nearly me versus them when I went to, the team that built it, of course, loved the platform because we owned it, we loved it. When we would bring it to other teams, they're going, oh, it doesn't do this, doesn't do that. It was because I was presenting it to them. Maybe it was my skills, could have been, but I wasn't one of them. That was a big problem I was coming up against. You want the social proof, a peer telling them, this is good, actually, or try it. That's so powerful when you're trying to get someone to use the platform, or even just take it for a spin. There's many ideas. We've put up some here, things like if there's quarterly meetings, even just get 5 minutes on your business's quarterly meeting, can I just show this to the audience? Might get buy-in, might not, but at least they're getting aware of it, and it just takes for that one person to put up their hand, I want to know more about this, or go to team meetings. There's many ways to get it out there. We're going to go into more as well, how we can help you with that. We have a good few slides, and actually we have a lot of slides, and feel free to, of course, take pictures because we could keep talking and talking, but think of it as just you can go back with them and reference them later.
And so before we get to a demo of a piece of technology that hopefully you'll see is also an embodiment of marketing, like something that helps you with this community building and marketing and driving usage. We thought we would pick one thing off of these lists here. We're not going to go through all of these, as delightful as that would be. But there's all sorts of lessons learned over the years that people have had, and there's some ways of getting started easily. And I'll pick one to start off with, and that is, Keith was talking about having an advocate to go out and do things, which is, I notice everyone, that's kind of one of the first things they do is, as Keith was saying, they have one, what's the lingo, FTE? They have one full-time person dedicated only to that. Now, one that I would point out is, I think it's important, and this is part of the product management angle, but it's also incredibly valuable for marketing, is it's good to go survey your developers, to ask them what they like and what they don't like. And I worked with our Pivotal Labs or Tanzu Labs people a couple years ago to just make freely available this survey that we send out, a developer toil audit. And it's a pretty good way of going through and asking developers, again, what works and doesn't work. And as the platform team, you can take that, and that gives you a list of things to start helping developers out with, right? Like what's working for them and not. And as when you're doing marketing, it's also valuable because if you ask that at first, maybe if you send that out on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, you can start to track if you've improved things, right? So if things that were previously a problem are no longer a problem, then you've been doing a good job, right? And as new things come up, you can start to discover what those are. So just asking and getting to discuss with developers what their issues are will help not only with your product management, but also figure out what to market.
Yeah, and what we touched on, it's ridiculously scary how powerful it is. The power of a sticker, like I have socks, I have a T-shirt. There's just the power of it, and it's quite cheap, and it's ridiculous how powerful it is. While you have it on places, people wonder, oh, what's that? Like it's something. Tell me more about that. It just opens up that conversation. Sometimes I find it really good. They just going, I've seen that, but what is it? Can you tell me more about it? A big one, so that was there on number 7. Another one would be even on social. So why would you ask, if we have an internal developer platform, why would I be posting on the socials about it? And it's a hard one to think of, but if you start posting stuff you're working on, what your platform can do, you'd be surprised how much talent you can attract and are starting getting interest. Oh, what's this? What are your company doing? I might like to work for that. So it's another way of attracting talent to a company as well. What other one? As we do have more. We said the advantages, but we said one. That's to start with. Don't think one and done. Absolutely. When you scale, the platform scales, the company scale, you need many advocates. So just It's not one and done at all.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like JP Morgan Chase, a large bank, they have like 25,000 developers worldwide, depending on what press release you read and what year. And they have a team of platform advocates that's grown to be 5 to 7 people, I think, that kind of operate globally to talk about, I think, a cluster of about 3 or 4 platforms that they have. They gave a talk at a DevOps Loop conference a couple years ago, going over what their practices are. But it really is, as your platform usage expands, you get a few more of these advocates to kind of scale it out, because they really do a lot of one-on-many, but they do a lot of like small-grained work.
Yeah.
And so the other, like, speaking of that, like, you've probably, like all of us, heard about a golden path or a path to production or the developer onboarding, or like all these kind of metaphors for like getting to start working and deploying your application and seeing if people use it or not, right? Like that whole process. And I think with this understanding of product management and product marketing, it's interesting to like look at how you architect that journey, the developer journey, with the actual platform and the tools that you have. And for example, in marketing, we wouldn't call this a developer journey, we call it a customer journey. And in the same way that you think about everything, let's like onboarding a developer from day one to like seeing how long it takes them to commit code and get their code deployed to production, like in marketing, you always think about what is that journey from someone knowing about us, someone identifying that we could help them, and then someone buying and using our stuff, right? And I think there's a lot of marketing things you can put in from that buyer journey into this developer journey as well. And it kind of helps highlight the importance of a lot of the developer experience and a lot of the really paying attention to making good customer experience for the developer that you see in platforms a lot. And Keith has a great demo of that, which is great, because otherwise you just see more slides instead of reality.
And on that point of more slides, what we're going to show here, and you don't have to apply it to this, but all kind of platforms, use the platform to market itself. Like, we always have that problem. You're onboarded to a new company or a new team. Go here for this, go here for that, go here for this. Like, it's chaos. Like, you just want to time to value. You just want to get there quickly, fast, and you're confident and know you're compliant with what you're doing. So one way, don't think of the platform as dead weight. Use it actually to market itself. So we're going to jump into a demo here. So this is Tanzu Application Platform. This is the user interface, as we know as Tanzu Developer Portal. I'm just using this as an example. This is not the way you have to do it. We'd like if you did it this way, but this is not the way you have to do it. So what I was saying is using the platform to market itself and to onboard developers fast, so they go, let's say we're doing that quarterly meeting and I get 5 minutes of time, and what do I show them? That they go, ooh, I want that. So as I was saying, tell me about your platform. So I can go into the platform and even let it describe itself. So if I go into the system, hopefully the font is okay. Here, the platform has documented itself. So if I want to understand, what does this platform do? What are the components? Like, some people don't want to know that, some people do, but they can go in here and we have a nice graph of going into the components. What do they actually do? Each component, I want to know more about, say, the application single sign-on. What does that do? A brief description, rather than going off, oh, I have to go find documentation somewhere, go to a wiki page, or go find someone's Google Doc I don't have access to that explains all this platform. The platform itself the documentation of the platform is within itself. And to bring that a step further is what we use is called Tech Docs. It's a part of Backstage, which is based on this user interface. We can see if we can do a bit better there. And you can describe the platform. What does it do? What is it for? What outcomes can I achieve with it? How do I get started? And it's a very rich format where you can easily write these documents, have animations, videos, and do whatever styling you want. So getting started, okay, I get the CLI. How do I go get it? Okay, here's steps how to go get it. There's many ways of, in this example, you can do it here, or you can, now most of actually our stuff are in marketplaces. You can use Chocolatey, Brew, any of those to just download our CLI. And same with IDE plugins, they're again in the marketplace. But it's not for you having to go off Google. How do I do this? How do I do that? The platform tells you of what it can do. And these docs are quite easy to use and write. And what we say is, the platform team, you start writing the documents. Then you can do it like a lunch and learn, how to write these, and show how developers can write these as they go along to enable others, and that's a very powerful thing because it's quite easy to do. One last thing I want to show you is, as just an example, is accelerators. Again, I was saying, you want to onboard someone to the platform, give them a bit of a wow. Again, when you come onto team, what languages are they using? What dependencies do we have to use? What security practices am I following? Am I pulling from the right place? So we have things what we call application accelerators. Think of them as a framework, or we've codified our company's own best practices and policies. So they're little, what would you call them? Get started, you could say. So for example, these are just examples out of the box. Again, your enterprise architect or a team of developers can construct these and codify. So let's say maybe even a junior developer joining the company knows they're following best practices and don't have to go looking for, where do I get that package? Where do I need to, am I following best practices? Where do I need to send it next? So example here, like an Angular front end, if this will open up now. But
while this is loading, I would make an analogy to this. Like, I don't know how it worked in your childhood, but when I was like, I don't know, maybe 12, I suddenly got this box from the Gillette company that was like shaving cream, razors, and deodorant. And it was almost like an accelerator. It was a bit of marketing that they were hoping that like that would form the template of the rest of how I use their platform on a daily basis, right? And so while what Keith is showing is very in comparison technical, and it can kind of seem like it has nothing to do with marketing, like it's important to think about like, how do you take this kind of customer-centric marketing way of thinking about what your developers would be doing so that this onboarding experience and everything feels like natural to them. Just like, of course I would have 3 blades on my razor. That's what I had when I started with. Why would I have otherwise, right? And so you've got this chance to kind of establish the habits and the ways people are thinking about it when you have these templates, these accelerators in place, and you have good documentation as well.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and it opened up there. It's as I said, it's codified all the company's best practices, and you're ready to start developing straight away, rather than spending time trying to work out, what version of this IDE plugin I'm meant to use, this version of this external package we're using. It's all codified. Just get going fast. So literally in the day, you're committing code faster and of better quality, and also it will have higher chances of succeeding going through the pipelines, the supply chains, because it's followed the company's best practices. You don't ever want that surprise, well, it worked in test and it doesn't run in production, because the practices, the security has been codified into it. That was just a quick journey. Like, we have loads of sessions here this week on Tanzu application platform. I'm actually doing a Meet the Expert afterwards. So we have Meet the Experts, we have the booth, we have booth theater. So please do reach out if you want to learn more about accelerators, see more in-depth examples of what we can do with this platform.
Yeah, well, first of all, if my stuff here works. Oh yeah, there you go. Keith and his team put a lot of work into the tech zone, and other people do as well that we work with. And speaking of marketing, that's technical. You can go check out a lot of how it's done successfully and learn by going there if you're interested in it. And then also, it'd be great if you take the survey. So I always pay attention to the good remarks people give in there. So say whatever you like. It'd be fun, but it's good to get some feedback. And with that, we have a few minutes left if anyone has questions that they'd like to ask us, which hopefully we will answer. Or not. That works out well too. All right, well, thanks. We appreciate y'all being here. It was fun to go over this stuff with you.
Yeah. Thank you.